What's up guys, welcome back. This is anime fiction. You'll be watching What If Naruto Became the 10 Tails in DC Part 4, now let's begin. United States Mount Justice. Hello, it appears you are beginning to wake up. Megan could only perceive intermittent sounds. Occasional flashes of light penetrated her eyelids as they slowly opened from their previously closed position. Megan let out a deep groan as she opened her eyes. Her vision was slightly impaired as a bright light overwhelmed her sight. Before she could fully acclimate to the situation, a sharp pain emanated from the side of her neck, prompting her to wince. "Please, take it easy. It's all right. Please remain calm." The gentle, reassuring voice that reached her ears was unmistakably familiar. "Artemis." Megan called out with hesitation. Her eyes quickly adjusted, clarifying her previously blurred vision, revealing a location she had not encountered since her arrival at Mount Justice. The medical bay. She turned her head to observe her recent yet familiar teammate seated at the edge of the bed beside her. "Welcome back, Megan. It is a pleasure to see you alert," Artemis remarked, her eyes shadowed by dark circles. She had been seated beside Megan's bed since the incident occurred, her heart heavy with concern. Despite their brief time as teammates, witnessing her wake up brought a smile to her tired face. For an individual like Artemis, who aimed to be a hero despite being raised in a family of villains, the friendships she cultivated within this team held significant value. Even the bothersome Wally West. "Artemis, could you please provide our current location?" Megan had limited familiarity with this location, having visited only once since her arrival. "Located in Mount Justice. You are currently located in the medical bay. Is this the medical bay?" Megan inquired with uncertainty, attempting to remember the reason for her presence. Fragments of memory surfaced, recalling the events that transpired prior to her awakening in this location. Megan instinctively tensed as anxiety enveloped her senses. It's acceptable. Rest assured, your safety is assured. We all are." Artemis spoke with assurance as she placed her palm on Megan's hand. "Could you please provide an update on the situation? In summary, we faced a significant defeat. We are fortunate that assistance arrived promptly." Artemis responded with transparency. "What was the duration of my absence?" "Approximately 1 day." "I see." Megan emitted a subtle sound as her muscles released tension. She massaged the region surrounding her neck that was experiencing significant discomfort. The green skin in that area had lost its hue and was transitioning to a shade of red. "Greetings, Miss Martian. It is pleasing to observe that you are awake." A robotic voice with a neutral tone then articulated. Soft metallic clangs accompanied the light footsteps of an individual entering the med bay. He donned a blue cape, and his exterior exhibited a metallic red finish. That is contingent upon whether he can be classified as a male to start with. "Thank you, Red Tornado," Megan observed as the android emerged. Her inherently cheerful disposition resulted in a subconscious smile. "It was my pleasure," he stated as he neared the bed. Megan turned her head and observed that, aside from the three of them, there was no one else present. "What is the status of the remaining team members?" Megan inquired of Red Tornado. The latter did not respond, and Artemis became unexpectedly quiet. "What seems to be the issue? Was there an incident involving them?" Megan's voice abruptly escalated in volume. "Your team is functioning, Miss Martian, although not all members are at their optimal condition." Red Tornado responded to her. "Could you please clarify your statement? I trust that another individual will provide you with the necessary insights on that matter. Now that you are awake, your presence is required in the mission room. Batman will be present to provide a briefing for everyone." Red Tornado dismissed her inquiry. After delivering his message, he turned around and departed. Megan turned her head to look at Artemis, who subtly shook her head, signaling not to discuss the matter. Mount Justice. Training facility. A male figure dressed in a black top and denim trousers struck a metal target in the center of a room with remarkable intensity. The red color of the S on his chest was particularly notable. Connor consistently struck the metal target with maximum force. Repeatedly, his extraordinary strength resulted in no significant damage to the testing machine, as all the energy from his punches was absorbed completely. Ralph Connor delivered a final blow before ceasing his assault, his breathing heavy and labored. He had been engaged in this activity for several hours. He was the first individual in the team to awaken, assisting the already alert Artemis. Reflecting on his previous setbacks, he had arrived here to release some tension. After over 9 hours of continuous discussion, Wally seeing this let out a slight sigh. Tornado wants us at the mission room. There's gonna be a briefing. Wally gave the message. I'm not going. Connor replied with an angry huff. Megan's awake. Wally wasn't surprised by Connor's words and gave a reply of his own. Connor's figure stopped. After a few seconds. I'm coming. Wally let out a slight smile. It was already known among the team that Megan and Connor had a little thing for each other, even if they hadn't done anything official yet. A gust of wind blew past again, leaving the spacious room to Superboy alone, who needed to take a shower now. 30 minutes later. Megan and Artemis could be seen walking out of the hallway. As they stepped into the mission room, a few figures appeared before their eyes. Artemis had her face darken a little, while Megan gave out a slight gasp. Her hand was covering her mouth. Everyone stood assembled in the mission room. Wally, Connor, Artemis, Megan, and Calder. Calder, however, was sadly in a wheelchair. Megan. Good, you're up. We were worried. Aqualad said with a smile. The majority part of his body was wrapped in white bandages, as well as casts on both arms. Oh, Calder. A teardrop slid down Megan's cheek as she walked towards Aqualad. It's okay, Megan. Not much to worry about. At most, he'll be out of the field for a while. Calder said with a smile on the part of his body that wasn't bandaged. Hey. No one asked how I'm feeling. Wally raised both arms in false dissatisfaction. You have super speed, you've basically already healed. Artemis retorted plainly. Wally had a broken arm as well as a fractured bone in his leg. Luckily for him, his super speed also came along with super healing. Glad you're up. Connor gave out few words. Thanks. Megan smiled happily. She then turned her head around only to finally realize that something was wrong. Guys. Where's Robin? Well, Wally was thinking of how to respond when the cave experienced visitors. Recognized Batman 02, recognized Green Lantern 05, recognized Green Lantern 14. 3 people stepped into the mission room through the Zeta tube. Batman and both Green Lanterns Jordan and Stewart. Good, you're all here. Bruce said in his usual gruff voice. It was more gloomy than usual. It only took a few seconds before the 3 of them stood in front of the 5 juniors. Batman sent his sharp glare over all of them. His gaze lingered a little longer on Calder before he opened his mouth. Good to see that most of you are all right. In light of the recent opponent you just faced, it can be considered noteworthy that none of you died. The first part of his long speech came to an end, leaving the team with mixed feelings. While the others were uneasy, Superboy felt the most irritable. He would rather not admit it, but the memory of his easy defeat weighed heavily on his mind. His frown directly showed his displeasure on the fact that they were even discussing this topic. That, however, doesn't change the fact that your actions got all of you almost killed. The heavy injuries that some of you have incurred are textbook proof of that. Batman said, with his gaze landing on Aqualad. The guy was literally wrapped in bandages like a mummy. Engaging an enemy that is clearly way out of your league. Despite how obvious it is, I still find myself asking, what in God's name were you thinking? Batman said. His tone and narrowed eyebrows had a forceful edge to it. The 5 teenagers shifted uncomfortably in their standing positions. It wasn't their fault, Batman. Aqualad sighed and spoke up, fully ready to claim responsibility. We couldn't just stay away after we saw what he did. This is my fault. It all happened because I didn't give the order to retreat when we discovered who we were dealing with. Batman heard his explanation, his face still expressionless. And why didn't you? We thought we could take him, Calder responded in a low tone. You thought you could take him? It seems you have difficulty estimating your capabilities, Aqualad. Batman didn't reply this time. Instead, it was Red Tornado who appeared at the end of the hallway, floating in a mini tornado. Calder remained silent. So what? Connor asked aggressively. Robin already contacted the League. We thought we could at least delay him until you guys showed up. This isn't our first time dealing with big threats. You were the one who led the attack first, Superboy. How did that work out for you? Batman asked Connor. The latter reserved the right to remain silent. The fact that he had been knocked out with just one hit was as embarrassing as it was infuriating. Without the prompt intervention of Green Lantern, your situation would be significantly more dire than it currently is. Either incapacitated or deceased. Your actions, while commendable in courage, were imprudent and posed a significant risk to your safety. That accounts for only a portion of the issues arising from yesterday's incident. Batman implied. 50%. Could you please clarify your statement? Wally inquired with a sense of confusion. The team had been confined to the base for an extended period, and there was a general lack of enthusiasm for reviewing the latest findings. Their understanding was limited to the fact that Green Lantern had sustained serious injuries from the adversary, and that the individual they had targeted was now officially recognized as a citizen. The reference to this provoked an intense anger in Superboy. However, there was nothing that could be done, as even the League found itself unable to intervene. Batman remained silent, while Hal Jordan activated his ring with a decisive motion. A holographic projection presented a report detailing the concealed information that had eluded media coverage. The footage of your encounter with the alien has been documented. The discussion held was not particularly enlightening, however. The insights shared provided sufficient information that has resulted in significant repercussions for the League. Red Tornado commenced delivering the report with the precision of a skilled assistant. Currently, the World Council is aware of the operations conducted by your covert team, while other entities are attempting to uncover your concealed identities. Several leagues have come to our attention, and operations have been highlighted, inadvertently leading us to relinquish possession of the Amazo android. Batman stated. His words were somewhat drawn out when discussing the League's operations, prompting Hal Jordan to feel a twinge of embarrassment. The use of his ring to access government secrets did not present a heroic image in any way. Batman had attempted to perform comparable tasks with the Watchtower's computer. The sole distinction was that he and Stewart possessed significantly thicker skin. The junior team's expressions shifted negatively in response to Batman's remarks, particularly upon learning that their confidential identities might be revealed. While it may not have been significant to Calder, Superboy, and Megan, it held importance for the other three members of the group. Is it possible for them to locate us? Wally inquired. Cyborg has clarified that matter, so there should be no concerns regarding that issue. However, you engaged in the conflict without concealing your identities. This demonstrates a lack of responsibility coupled with a disregard for caution. Batman remarked, unbeknownst to him and the other members of the League, that their secrets may not be as secure as they believed. I would like to address the primary purpose for our gathering today. This is to inform you that until the current situation is resolved and the League provides further guidance, your missions will be suspended until further notice. His remarks led to a noticeable change in their expressions. Nevertheless, following all that transpired, no one voiced any objections. What about the, alien? Wally inquired. Batman raised an eyebrow, and Hal's expression turned hideous. The League is currently unsure how to treat him. With what has happened, there is little we can do. Little. The guy physically harmed us. What's keeping us from taking him to court now that he's a citizen? Wally inquired with enthusiasm. He became enraged every time he thought of that combat, which was much worse than their encounter with Amazo. 1. Taking this lawsuit to court will expose your identities. 2. Since you were the ones who delivered the first blow, and 3. Because we said so. Batman's look became more intense, scaring Wally slightly. Now, you will all remain here without permission to leave for the next few days, until we say otherwise. Are there any objections? Good. Batman spoke without waiting for anybody to respond. Lanterns, do your thing. Batman abruptly moved out of the path. Both lanterns nodded and turned to face Aqualad, prompting him to raise an eyebrow. Before anybody else could figure out what was going on, they both cranked their rings up and launched green energy rays at him. 4 minutes later. Thank you for your help. Aqualad said truly, bowing his head down. Not a problem. Just a little willpower. Hal replied with a small smile and a hint of perspiration. The lantern ring's powers were genuinely astounding. Worthy of the title most powerful weapon in the universe. With its healing qualities, Kaldor was back to normal in less than 5 minutes. It's unfortunate that their squad didn't have a teen lantern. Good. Now that everything's completed, let's go to Robin. Bruce remarked with a little nod as the group headed down the corridor. Where are they going? Megan questioned, little perplexed. Probably to do the same thing to Robin they did to Kaldor. Wally responded affirmatively. Robin. Whatever happened to him? Megan inquired with concern. He broke his spine. Wally spoke after a little pause. The entire cave was silent when Red Tornado snuck out of the mission chamber at an unknown place. Bruce stood at Dick's bed. Seeing him lie calmly in a coma-like state, his hands tightened subconsciously. Robin had not awoken since the previous day. The kick that drilled him to the ground had injured his spinal nerves. One hand was put on Batman's shoulder. I understand how you feel, Bruce. It's all right, your boy Wonder will be fine. Hal replied with a smile. Stewart, who stood alongside him, nodded in accord. When his Green Lantern suit was on, John Stewart was a man of few words, and he only spoke when absolutely necessary. I understand. However, it does not mean I will let him get away with it. Bruce spoke solemnly. The he was referring to was Naruto. One step at a time, Batman. Stewart eventually opened his mouth and said something. Batman did not respond, but did ask Hal a question. Hal, do you know anything about him? You mentioned that we don't yet. Something important. Except for the talent he used against me, which I believe you already know. Nothing else. Hal responded. His heart quivered as he recalled that little conflict. He had nearly perished. Without the passive protection of his ring, Barry's swift reaction, and the ring's healing function, he would most likely be dead right now. You mentioned he was an extraterrestrial, correct? Well, I've never seen or heard of any aliens with his set of abilities. Stewart replied with a grimace. At this point, I have a speculation that he may not be alien at all. Batman spoke up at the exact moment, capturing the attention of both lanterns. Really? So, what do you believe he is? John could not help but inquire. Somebody from another dimension. Probably another Earth. Batman revealed his deductions. Whatever made you come up with that idea? Hal was astonished by Bruce's remarks. Just a few things. But I am not sure yet. Bruce's eyes narrowed as he said. He stood for a few seconds before turning around and exiting the room. Where are you going? To investigate. And with that, Batman left. The two Green Lanterns exchanged a sigh before focusing their attention on the injured Robin. A few minutes later, Robin was still asleep on the bed. They didn't believe it was essential to force him awake. Both rings glowed just as they were about to turn around and go. Hal and John exchanged looks as they glanced at the rings, indicating that someone wished to deliver them a holographic message. They accepted, and both of their rings lighted up, with a little person hovering above them. Lantern Tuck. John Stewart yelled out uncertainly. He only encountered this lamp a few hours ago. What made him call them? Greetings, Lantern Stewart, Lantern Jordan. Greetings. Is there anything we can assist you with? What about the, alien? Wally inquired. Batman raised an eyebrow, and Hal's expression turned hideous. The League is currently unsure how to treat him. With what has happened, there is little we can do. Little. The guy physically harmed us. What's keeping us from taking him to court now that he's a citizen? Wally inquired with enthusiasm. He became enraged every time he thought of that combat, which was much worse than their encounter with Amazo. 1. Taking this lawsuit to court will expose your identities. 2. Since you were the ones who delivered the first blow, and 3. Because we said so. Batman's look became more intense, scaring Wally slightly. Now, you will all remain here without permission to leave for the next few days, until we say otherwise. Are there any objections? Good. Batman spoke without waiting for anybody to respond. Lanterns, do your thing. Batman abruptly moved out of the path. Both lanterns nodded and turned to face Aqualad, prompting him to raise an eyebrow. Before anybody else could figure out what was going on, they both cranked their rings up and launched green energy rays at him. 4 minutes later. "Thank you for your help," Aqualad said truly, bowing his head down. "Not a problem. Just a little willpower," Hal replied with a small smile and a hint of perspiration. The lantern ring's powers were genuinely astounding. Worthy of the title most powerful weapon in the universe. With its healing qualities, Kaldor was back to normal in less than 5 minutes. It's unfortunate that their squad didn't have a teen lantern. Good. Now that everything's completed, let's go to Robin, Bruce remarked with a little nod as the group headed down the corridor. Where are they going? Megan questioned, little perplexed. Probably to do the same thing to Robin they did to Kaldor. Wally responded affirmatively. Robin. Whatever happened to him? Megan inquired with concern. He broke his spine. Wally spoke after a little pause. The entire cave was silent when Red Tornado snuck out of the mission chamber at an unknown place. Bruce stood at Dick's bed. Seeing him lie calmly in a coma-like state, his hands tightened subconsciously. Robin had not awoken since the previous day. The kick that drilled him to the ground had injured his spinal nerves. One hand was put on Batman's shoulder. I understand how you feel, Bruce. It's all right, your boy Wonder will be fine. Hal replied with a smile. Stewart, who stood alongside him, nodded in accord. When his Green Lantern suit was on, John Stewart was a man of few words, and he only spoke when absolutely necessary. I understand. However, it does not mean I will let him get away with it. Bruce spoke solemnly. The he was referring to was Naruto. One step at a time, Batman. Stewart eventually opened his mouth and said something. Batman did not respond, but did ask Hal a question. Hal, do you know anything about him? You mentioned that we don't yet. Something important. Except for the talent he used against me, which I believe you already know. Nothing else. Hal responded. His heart quivered as he recalled that little conflict. He had nearly perished. Without the passive protection of his ring, Barry's swift reaction, and the ring's healing function, he would most likely be dead right now. You mentioned he was an extraterrestrial, correct? Well, I've never seen or heard of any aliens with his set of abilities. Stewart replied with a grimace. At this point, I have a speculation that he may not be alien at all. Batman spoke up at the exact moment, capturing the attention of both lanterns. Really? So, what do you believe he is? John could not help but inquire. Somebody from another dimension. Probably another Earth. Batman revealed his deductions. Whatever made you come up with that idea? Hal was astonished by Bruce's remarks. Just a few things. But I am not sure yet. Bruce's eyes narrowed as he said. He stood for a few seconds before turning around and exiting the room. Where are you going? To investigate. And with that, Batman left. The two Green Lanterns exchanged a sigh before focusing their attention on the injured Robin. A few minutes later, Robin was still asleep on the bed. They didn't believe it was essential to force him awake. Both rings glowed just as they were about to turn around and go. Hal and John exchanged looks as they glanced at the rings, indicating that someone wished to deliver them a holographic message. They accepted, and both of their rings lighted up, with a little person hovering above them. Lantern Tuck. John Stewart yelled out uncertainly. He only encountered this lamp a few hours ago. What made him call them? Greetings, Lantern Stewart, Lantern Jordan. Greetings. Is there anything we can assist you with? That's not the situation. I'm calling to notify you that multiple fleets of spacecraft have landed in your sector space. Most can be identified with certain planets in distant star systems, while others are rogue. But the point is that they've all arrived in your sector and are going for your planet. I've received word of this, and I worry you won't like the reason. United States. A specific military base. In an isolated area similar to the last one. And this. Red Queen is the reason you were able to find the League's traces. A councilman inquired with interest about a man standing a distance away who, unlike the others in the room, was not holographic. Although he was questioning the middle-aged men, his focus was mostly on the female next to him. if it could even be classified as feminine in the first place. The other councilmen had similar expressions. Part of their attention was focused on the guy, while the other, much larger, part was on the red-haired, less than 4-foot-tall lowly whose features appeared to be little more than 10 years old. The idea that this was not even a person, but rather a holographic image of powerful artificial intelligence, was fascinating enough. The fact that it could identify the League's break-ins, something the US government had never been able to do before, piqued their curiosity even more. After all, everyone in the room had high-ranking jobs. They were already familiar with the notion of artificial intelligence. Sam Lane gave an expressionless nod in response to the inquiry. He especially sought the Red Queen from Naruto. No, not particularly. He envisioned a very powerful AI capable of meeting his current demands, but he wasn't a lolicon. He couldn't comprehend why the AI appeared in this manner. If Sam hadn't known Naruto was an indifferent creature, he'd have assumed it was the result of his horrible sense of humor. Of all, he was merely complaining about the Red Queen's show appearance. I'm sure you already know. I suspect Cyborg, a Justice League member, hacked into our satellites to prevent us from further investigating their secret identities. Due to our restricted skills, I asked the alien, Naruto, to supply us with a good choice for turning the tables. And he gave me her. Sam spoke as he switched his focus to the red girl and began to pace about the room. While she may not look like much, I assure you that her appearance is just an appetizing front, made to house her true capabilities. Sam spoke forcefully, a grave expression on his face. My team of researchers, specially made up of the best people the military has to offer, have thoroughly studied her capabilities and come to a final evaluation. What could that possibly be, General? A councilman inquired. With the exception of one location, she represents the most sophisticated AI available globally. A scientific innovation that is over 70 years ahead of its era. Lane provided a response. That is quite a bold assertion, General. That is certainly a strong assertion. However, I completely concur with this perspective. Sam responded with a lack of enthusiasm. Naruto's statement clearly indicated that she surpasses the most advanced system that Luthor employs to secure his personal database. His remarks effectively brought about a hush among all present. Each individual held significant influence, possessing status and authority that surpassed that of a prominent state governor. The World Council was established. A governmental entity that commands respect, even from the President of the United States. Consequently, they had undoubtedly engaged with the notorious proprietor of LexCorp, Lex Luthor. Their comprehension of this figure was equally, if not more, advanced than that of the Justice League, who regarded him as a high-priority adversary on their monitoring list. Lex possessed a multitude of qualities. Strategic, relentless, calculating, affluent, and above all, intelligent. He was indeed a villainous character, yet he also possessed an intellectual brilliance that enabled him to lead advancements in the technological industry. How could they remain unaware when they covertly financed his Cadmus operations? The Global Council provided funding to the military, which in turn allocated resources to Cadmus. The three parties maintained a highly collaborative relationship. What other means would Cadmus employ to continue dangerous experimentation despite being apprehended by the Justice League multiple times? Lane had observed the biological weapons developed by Luthor. The advanced technology provided was sufficient for Lane to grasp the brilliance of Lex Luthor, without delving into aspects such as cloning technology. Naruto asserted that the Red Queen surpassed Lex's current capabilities by a significant margin. It was astonishing to contemplate. However, following the insights provided by his researchers. Do you concur with his statement, General Lane? A middle-aged woman inquired with interest. For an individual of that nature, who defies conventional judgment, it is unlikely they would simply rise and exclaim words such as impossible. Based on the information I have received, I see no reason to decline. Sam provided his response while seamlessly progressing with his report. The Red Queen was a concept introduced by Naruto and should therefore be examined with utmost diligence. In straightforward terms, he prefers to avoid assuming responsibility should any issues arise with it. Naruto was an extraterrestrial who established an agreement with the World Council based on a foundation of mutual understanding and shared benefits. However, it was evident that the perceived understanding was rooted in the reality that the former possessed an overwhelming strength that the latter could not manage. If that is not the case, Lane would likely be the first to deploy all the forces under his command to apprehend him. Nonetheless, as an otherworlder, no amount of advantages offered would diminish their caution towards him. This situation was and is expected to persist indefinitely. You mentioned save for one place. Where do you reference General Lane? The fortress of Superman. Are you referring to the Arctic? Affirmative. It is reasonable, given that it is protected by Kryptonian technology. The Red Queen has informed me that the database of the Leagues is protected by comparable technology. Sam presented the findings of his team. In addition to the challenges of infiltrating the Justice League watchtower without detection and facing countermeasures, the Red Queen significantly surpassed the capabilities currently available to human civilization. Contemplating the capabilities of the Red Queen, he experienced a profound sense of ambition. Integrating her into a country's systems would significantly enhance its national security. Activities such as foreign infiltrations, assassinations, and covert espionage would essentially be relegated to the past. The capabilities for intelligence gathering would significantly increase. Confidential information about countries should remain undisclosed, rather than resembling a continuous cycle of high-stakes operations. The security of weapons, missile bases, and nuclear bombs would be fundamentally assured. Professor Albert Gillian provided a comprehensive explanation in a single sentence. Utilizing the Red Queen, they had the capability to oversee the entire globe. That did not even take into account the economic boost. Should a small nation acquire the Red Queen, it could potentially emerge as a dominant force, exceeding the capabilities of the United States within a span of 8 years. All these functions elicited a strong sense of anticipation. Certainly, while the advantages were significant, the associated risks were equally considerable. After Lane concluded his report, a profound silence enveloped the room, leaving the councilman immersed in contemplation. Eventually, an individual spoke up, breaking the silence. Is it advisable to fully utilize the Red Queen? The individual inquired precisely what the other council members were contemplating. The issue did not lie with the commodity itself. No, the commodity was exceptionally remarkable. The problem originated with the initial proprietor of this commodity. I am unable to provide a definitive response to that inquiry. Sam responded with a shake of his head. The Red Queen represents technology that is significantly advanced for its era. The existing technological capabilities on Earth are insufficient for a comprehensive analysis, let alone replication. I am concerned that my team is only beginning to explore the potential. The expertise of the world's leading researchers was significantly deficient. It resembled the interaction between a 10-year-old child and a television remote control. They were able to utilize it with ease, yet they did not grasp its underlying mechanisms. Without a thorough understanding of the inner mechanisms, how can one ascertain whether it is equipped with an explosive device? The Red Queen represented a duality of power. If Naruto were able to exert control over the Red Queen, which they believed he could, what would prevent him from utilizing it against them at his discretion? If she were integrated into the system of a nation, the individual in control of the Red Queen would possess authority over the entire country. If every nation globally adopted it, the entire world would essentially be within his reach. The mere thought instilled a sense of fear within them, rendering them powerless. The Red Girl had the potential to provide significant advantages, yet they hesitated to fully capitalize on it. Assign your team to analyze the technology related to AI. It is advisable to ensure continuous availability if necessary. Replicating her for our purposes would be optimal. The head councilman stated with gravity. The silence clearly indicated a complete absence of objections. Indeed, they remained unwilling to undertake such a significant risk. Sam did not raise any objections and felt a sense of internal satisfaction regarding the matter. However, he had significant doubts regarding their ability to produce any results. As he mentioned, the AI was simply too advanced. Even if they were able to study her in advance, the conservative estimate provided to him was a timeframe of 20 to 40 years before any conclusive results could be obtained. That was, of course, unless it was awarded to Lex Luthor. However, it was highly unlikely that this would occur. Everyone was aware of Lex's ambition. Given his wisdom, should he be granted access to the Red Queen, the outcomes would be uncertain. The advantages and potential drawbacks associated with this matter were significant, and the council would not consider including Luthor in this substantial undertaking. Lane would not either. Proceeding forward. With the decision regarding the AI now finalized, I would like us to focus on the costs associated with its acquisition. The head councilman stated. His statements promptly garnered multiple affirmations. Indeed, what they acquired this time was exceedingly valuable. Their agreement with Naruto was characterized by an equal exchange. The council observed the little red loli with concern, contemplating whether their resources had been entirely depleted in the pursuit of acquiring her. Gotham Plains. General Lane stated in a commanding tone. The subtle twitch on his face was noted by the council members. Sam directed his attention towards the AI. The individual did not respond, however. A hologram materialized in the room, displaying a remarkably impressive scene. The council observed the scene before them with evident surprise. The expansive area that was previously characterized by grass and trees has been transformed, now occupied by what can only be described as a small city. The expansive grass pastures have been diminished to limited sections featuring sparse grass patches, while the remainder of the terrain is evidently flattened and composed of solid rock. The varied terrain has been leveled to create a cohesive environment featuring several modern buildings and elevated platforms distributed across the area, with a prominent tower structure at the center serving as the main headquarters. Accompanying it were numerous technological innovations. The aerial vessels and floating platforms contributed to an environment that resembled a city far more advanced than its contemporary counterparts. Their current observations were limited to what could be faintly detected through satellite imaging. Any drone that neared the area for observation would promptly lose control upon approach. The profound silence clearly indicated their awe at the scene before them. Sam exhibited the same characteristics. The Red Queen had presented it to him 30 minutes prior, exactly 7 minutes following the conclusion of his call with Naruto. The neighboring residents of Gotham were unaware of the existence of this location. How was he able to construct such a remarkable piece in just a few minutes? He expressed his intention to establish the area as his base of operations. It is not unexpected how all of this transpired. Lane stated openly. However, the value of the AI significantly exceeds the region itself. Does it not? A question was posed in confusion. No one took the time to inquire about the origins of this place. I concur. What makes this piece of land so valuable that he would consider trading her for it? Another inquiry was made. He indicated that an object would be arriving in that area shortly. I believe that whatever it may be, it holds significant value, even for an individual like him. The councilmen were deeply affected. An item that would appeal to extraterrestrial beings. A strong desire ignited within them at the mere thought of it. However, upon recalling that this entity possessed the ability to foresee the future, the intense fervor was swiftly quelled by an overwhelming wave of apprehension. This matter is no longer relevant. Naruto articulated it explicitly to emphasize its significance. They demonstrated the insight to recognize the warning embedded within it. Regardless of their level of greed, they were not willing to risk their lives in a gamble. Initiate satellite surveillance of the area. We do not wish to engage in a dispute over it, however. It is situated on terrestrial grounds. It is essential for us to understand what this matter entails. Ultimately, he remains a potential threat. There is nothing inappropriate about a degree of oversight. The head councilman stated with gravity as he swirled the glass of whiskey in his hand. He did not intend to engage in conflict with the alien. Despite their inability to defeat him, they did not incur any losses in this exchange. They were all affluent individuals, after all. The value of the land outside Gotham was not perceived as significant by them. They achieved a product of even greater value. In the realm of business, there are no permanent adversaries. Only enduring interests. After an additional 2 minutes, the meeting concluded. Sam maintained a neutral expression as he turned to exit. At that moment, the still Red Queen articulated a statement. I apologize for the interruption, General Lane, but I must report an ongoing action that requires your attention. Red Queen? What is it? Sam inquired with a raised eyebrow. An individual is attempting to breach my systems. She responded with a casual demeanor. Sam's expression shifted to one of displeasure. Rest assured, General Lane, this endeavor is far from presenting any real danger. A minimal effort at best. She persisted in her dialogue to alleviate the concerns of the general.
Who is it?
The same was not genuinely concerned. Despite his reservations about Naruto, he maintained a level of understanding with him. If the Red Queen could be compromised by any random individual, then she would not merit her assessment. Disregard the notion that access to this military base is limited. Only individuals of the caliber of the Justice League and Lex Luthor would be considered for entry, yet they would still fall under that classification. A display materialized before him, revealing the military room he had exited moments earlier. The display focused closely on a specific military personnel at his computer station. A compact drive was connected to the USB port, remaining largely inconspicuous. Sam's expression deepened in intensity. The source of the leak originated from within his team.
What are their intentions?
I have conducted an analysis of the drive. It is designed to discreetly download all accessible data from any connected server, leaving minimal traces behind. However, the download range has been minimized to facilitate the search for all information stored within the last hour. The Red Queen responded. Lane promptly comprehended. As a member of the military, his senses were more acute than those of an average individual, allowing him to quickly deduce the intentions of the culprit. The secret identities of the Justice League's protégés. The investigation had been focused solely on this matter for the past few hours. Since acquiring the Red Queen, he had only utilized her for the CAF incident involving the Justice League products. An individual was attempting to acquire the League's confidential identities via him. Within seconds, a multitude of thoughts traversed his mind. Please retrieve the file on this individual, Lane asserted with gravity. He would not accept traitors within his ranks. Relevant information promptly became available to him. Eliminate any items that do not serve a purpose. He placed another order. The Red Queen complied with the instructions given to her. 30 seconds later.
Luthor.
Sam's gaze sharpened. The somber atmosphere enveloping him deepened as he reviewed the report. This specific personnel was reportedly introduced into his base under the influence of Cadmus. He was not alone in this regard. While there was a possibility that this might not be the work of Lex Luthor, it is important to note that Cadmus had numerous individuals engaged in the project. Some council members may also be included. Undoubtedly, Lex was the initial individual that came to mind.
Could you investigate whether Luthor is the mastermind behind this?
Lane inquired with a serious tone. My access is confined to this base and is further restricted within its parameters. My capabilities are consequently limited. The words entered Sam's ears with a sense of calm, prompting a frown from him. The Red Queen did not possess full access to the base's systems. Due to concerns regarding potential outcomes, access for the Red Queens was limited to this military base and one specific satellite. All essential information was thoroughly removed prior to her integration. If not, based on her capabilities, the Red Queen could ascertain the identities of all Justice League members almost instantaneously upon gaining total control of all satellites in the United States. Lane turned around and exited, his mind occupied with numerous thoughts. Sam held a genuine wariness towards Lex Luthor, one of the few individuals who elicited such a response. With his focus now directed towards him, Lane needed to strategize his subsequent steps meticulously. Lex had extensive connections. He was not an individual with whom one could engage casually. However, let us prioritize the initial steps. An unfortunate mole is poised to endure an unprecedented ordeal. In the expanse beyond Earth's atmosphere, a portal was created in the emptiness of space. A solitary spaceship emerged from the portal located thousands of miles away and swiftly progressed forward. United States. Central City. It appears the mole has been apprehended. Lex inquired with consideration as he examined the encrypted message he had just received. He was not directing his inquiry at anyone specifically, as it functioned more as a statement than as an actual question. The communication explicitly detailed that the individual embedded within Area 37 military base was apprehended recently. It appears that he was apprehended by General Lane personally and subsequently taken to the interrogation room for thorough questioning. The sender of the message was evidently another mole.
What is your opinion on this, Mercy?
Lex directed a question towards the composed woman positioned at the steering wheel of the limousine. His voice conveyed no emotional response to the situation as he inquired of the female figure without turning his head at all. Mercy operated the classic black limousine, which was under stringent security, with a sense of ease. Her short dark hair was neatly parted to the side, and her expression conveyed a subtle sense of indifference. Assistant, chauffeur, and security personnel for the renowned CEO of Lex Corp, Mercy Graves. I am uncertain. She responded with a lack of enthusiasm, her expression marked by a hint of coldness. Mercy, have you ever participated in guessing games? Lex inquired with a hint of amusement. I possess. What is the next step? I have a preference against them. She responded with a slight undertone of dissatisfaction. Working for an individual like Lex Luthor presented significant challenges. The challenges presented by her supervisor over the years led her to become a valued patron at the pharmacy. Lex was unbothered by her tone during the conversation. Ultimately, despite their roles as employer and employee, they had developed a relatively close relationship over the years of collaboration. Mercy Graves was the sole employee permitted to address him by name without repercussions. Additionally, I presume you have already formed your opinions on the subject, correct? Mercy inquired with a hint of sarcasm. Oh Mercy, you have a deep understanding of my character. Lex responded in a tone that conveyed sarcasm. It seems you anticipated his failure, did you not? Mercy inquired with keen interest. She had been with Luthor for an extended period, gaining insight into his typical thought processes and approach to reasoning. I did that. Based on the information he provided, I anticipated a failure probability of no less than 86. Lex stated in a relaxed manner. His tone was casual, as though he had not just sentenced a man to a dire outcome. To him, the mole was merely a chess piece for evaluating his assumptions. He found it unnecessary to contemplate the consequences he faced after being apprehended. What was the objective? Mercy inquired. Data, my esteemed assistant, data. The essential element to all matters. Lex responded with a smile. The recent developments over the past week are quite noteworthy, to say the least. While not the primary character, General Lane stands out as a significant figure in this context. Deserving of attention. It seems that he requires increased attention. Lex's eyes radiated curiosity. Mercy's eyebrows furrowed. It has appeared once more. Her supervisor was formulating a strategy. However, you did not acquire anything of significant value. Oh. That is your perspective, Mercy. Lex smiled lightly as he lifted a small canned beverage to his lips. He elevated the tablet in his hand and made several taps on the screen. The tablet displayed an image of a grand city located on the outskirts of Gotham City. What is that? Mercy, observing the tablet via the rearview mirror, expressed surprise. When did her supervisor develop an interest in watching sci-fi movies? That, my dear, is a city small in size, yet a city all the same. Luthor remarked with his characteristic smile. On the periphery of Gotham. Mercy was left in a state of disbelief by his words. You, however, that cannot. Her lips quivered as she articulated fragmented sentences, grappling with the reality of what she was witnessing. Her eyes were fully open in astonishment. Are you serious? She inquired with astonishment. Do I appear to be joking? Lex displayed a subtle frown without shifting his gaze. Mercy quickly regained her composure. Indeed, Lex was not the type of individual to engage in such humor. The reality that he was not joking rendered it more difficult to accept. How is that possible? I have not received any updates regarding the construction of a city outside Gotham. Could you please clarify when this event occurred? My assistant, we inhabit a realm where deities and aquatic beings coexist. Extraterrestrial beings with the ability to elevate structures and individuals who can exceed the speed of sound are observed on a weekly basis. I can confidently state that at this juncture, nothing takes me by surprise. Lex stated in a relaxed manner. As for your other question, this city was built this afternoon.
Well, let's just say about 3 hours ago. Another casual statement left her doubting her life. Build such a place in one afternoon? Did she forget to wake up this morning? Lex didn't respond to her. Another picture appeared, but unlike the last one that was from the Gotham News Network, this one was satellite imaging. It wasn't hacked, of course. As a very successful businessman and heir to the Luthor wealth, it was only normal to have a few private satellites under his control, right? The scene of a city appearing out of thin air 3 hours ago played itself on the tablet. Luthor continued to rewind to the time before the city appeared, and a figure was shown standing on a clear field. "It's him!" Mercy exclaimed. After what had happened recently, only people who lived in the forests wouldn't recognize that face. "Yes, him," Lex said lightly. His face carried a small smile, but his eyes were relatively gloomy. Considering that this was the work of an alien, I don't find it even a little surprising. After all, Superman's fortress appeared out of thin air in similar ways. Mercy listened to his words and couldn't refute. When it was all chalked up to alien tech, things became much easier to understand and believe. But when that thought disappeared, a new one sprung up. "Is he your actual point of interest?" she asked Lex after piecing some loose ends together. The government had publicly legalized Naruto's stay on Earth. It wasn't just America, but more than half of the countries in the UN. Sam Lane was a general who worked for the government. Although she didn't know much, she could still guess some possible relations. Perhaps General Lane had some kind of connection to the mysterious alien. Mercy thought so as she continued to drive smoothly. "Don't worry your pretty little head about it. It's none of your concern, and there are some things you shouldn't concern yourself with, my little assistant," Lex replied. The smile on his face was gone, replied with an icy indifference as he relaxed in his chair while staring at the screen. Small thoughts appeared in his mind occasionally as he took a gulp. Lex was a complicated person. The key words to describe his personality followed a similar pattern. Self-obsessed, jealous, egotistical, ruthless, petty, power-driven and paranoid. He was a literal power-hungry maniac who wanted to have everyone and everything under his grasp. In terms of being a paranoid entity, he was second only to Batman in that regard, while his arrogance was second to none. That arrogance, resting on the shoulders of his ninth-level intellect, was what fueled his superiority complex. He saw himself as a superior race, subconsciously looking down on everyone else around him. So Lex Luthor couldn't and wouldn't stand the possibility of anyone being more powerful or more important than he was. This, among other reasons, was the constant drive behind his hatred for the man of tomorrow, Superman, and caused him to become Clark's archenemy. To him, someone like Superman with all his godlike abilities was unqualified to wield such power. An extraterrestrial parading about as the hope and savior of humanity? How outrageous! The fact that the world seemed dependent on one being, during times of trouble, always waiting for Superman to arrive and save the day, it honestly sickened him. In his view, humanity was simply placing their lives in the hands of an alien alongside his band of merry do-gooders instead of doing their best to solve their problems. What was the difference between this and seeking death? Instead of advancing, the Earth would decline, with its people always thinking that everything would be fine as long as they had the Justice League. Only he, Lex Luthor, was qualified to become the champion of humanity. To lead mankind on the path of true evolution and conquer the stars. Superman was definitely doing more harm than good. Plus, who knows when the almighty Man of Steel will decide to turn his face against mankind. What would the people of Earth do then? Who could possibly stop him then? Countless thoughts were encased in his brain. Lex Luthor, in a way, was both jealous and afraid of the Man of Steel. In a head-on confrontation, Superman would crush him 10 times out of 10. He knew it subconsciously in his heart, but that didn't mean he would admit it. And so, in his quest to destroy Superman and all he stood for, he created Cadmus, a biological research facility burdened with the goal of creating the world's greatest biological weapons. All so he could one day defeat Superman himself. This was his goal, his driving force. And now, something interesting had appeared within his world.
Something all too similar to Superman, yet in the same way, vastly different from him. An alien with powers and abilities which he had no clear estimate and could possibly be an obstacle in his path to world dominance. Lex's eyes narrowed slightly. This was a variable, a dangerous yet intriguing variable. That being the case, he could serve some use for the light. Lex said to himself inwardly while in deep thought. That, however, was interrupted by the sound of his phone ringing. A call? Lex wondered, as he wasn't expecting anyone. Moreover, the caller was unknown. Still, he picked up the phone and answered without much thought. "This is Luthor. Your recent stunt is getting on my nerves, Lex." The deep voice on the other end of the phone growled in displeasure. Lex's eyes widened imperceptibly for a moment before regaining composure. "I wonder what gives me the honor to receive a call from the esteemed General Lane himself?" Hex asked casually. He had a good idea of what Sam was calling about. The voice on the other end was silent. "You need to learn to respect yourself, Lex. Although the military and Cadmus are partnered, that does not give you the right to involve yourself in state affairs." Sam remarked coldly. "What in God's name are you talking about? Please speak clearly." Looks like he was right. "Peter Quill." Sam interjected before he could finish. "An employee recommended by Cadmus was caught trying to hack into our servers. Should I believe this has nothing to do with you?" "Believe what you will, Lane. What difference does it make?" Lex responded nonchalantly. "Why a Cadmus recommended personnel decided on such an act is beyond my knowledge. But to take such a risk, TSK. Whatever he wanted to obtain must be significant. Especially for who put him up to it." Sam's face was gloomy. Listening to Lex, who was playing word games, he inwardly scolded all the ancestral generations of the Luthors. The calm, composed voice of the bald egomaniac truly irked him to no end. Currently, there was nothing he could do to Lex, and both of them knew it. Firstly, there was no substantial evidence. Secondly, even if there were, he couldn't do anything with it. The Council wouldn't allow him to take any action due to their cooperation with Cadmus. At present, the government and military still needed them to produce weapons for the United States. Alongside ordinary weapons of war, projects created to counter the Justice League were under Cadmus' supervision. How could they possibly put Luthor in jail? Lex could just cut off the supply of advanced weapons to the military? Who would suffer then? And finally, even if he put Lex in prison, the latter would still find a way to get out. LexCorp could run just fine even if Luthor was incarcerated. Coupled with a few luxuries granted by pulling some connections, he would just treat his imprisonment as an extended vacation. No matter how he played it, Lane could gain a small win at most, but Lex would never suffer a loss. Still, he couldn't just let Luthor go just like that. Otherwise, he would lose face. At the end, he could only issue a deep warning. There is only so much the Council will tolerate, even from you. Whether this has anything to do with me remains to be clarified. And to be honest, this topic no longer interests me." Lex finished his soda with satisfaction. "I am interested, however, in the recent happenings pertaining to a certain extraterrestrial resident. And certain sources inform me that you have some dealings with the person in question." Hearing his words, Sam frowned slightly. What the hell is Luthor up to this time? He couldn't have possibly set his sights on Naruto, could he? Thinking of Lex attempting to scheme against the latter, Lane shuddered slightly. The thought of the outcome was not the least bit amusing to him. "I'm sorry to interrupt you, General, but I believe we have a problem on our hands." He was about to speak when the sweet voice of the lowly AI sounded in his ears. "A concern?" Lane frowned deeply. "I warn you, Lex. It's in your best interests to stay away from Naruto. Don't have any funny thoughts on this matter, or the results will be tragic. It would be best for everyone if you just focused on your election." Lane issued his final statement before unceremoniously ending the call. Lex pulled the phone away from his ears. His face didn't give off any abnormalities, but those who knew him would instantly spot the frigid coldness emanating from his eyes. Hidden within Sam's words was a subtle threat. This alone made Lex rather unhappy. If I can't get the information I want the easy way, then he'll just have to obtain it from the general himself. He tapped his fingers on the chair rhythmically. Deep in his mind, a sinister plan was brewing. Lex, we're here. Mercy, who was listening to his conversation the whole time, informed him. The car had come to a halt and the door was opened by a bodyguard. Lex stepped out of the car, and what greeted him were the constant flashes of light from the cameras of countless reporters. Mr. Luthor, over here. Mr. Luthor. Lex didn't even squint as he took in all the fanfare that was in front of him. A strong desire ignited within them at the mere thought of it. However, upon recalling that this entity possessed the ability to foresee the future, the intense fervor was swiftly quelled by an overwhelming wave of apprehension. This matter is no longer relevant. Naruto articulated it explicitly to emphasize its significance. They demonstrated the insight to recognize the warning embedded within it. Regardless of their level of greed, they were not willing to risk their lives in a gamble. Initiate satellite surveillance of the area. We do not wish to engage in a dispute over it, however. It is situated on terrestrial grounds. It is essential for us to understand what this matter entails. Ultimately, he remains a potential threat. There is nothing inappropriate about a degree of oversight. The head councilman stated with gravity as he swirled the glass of whiskey in his hand. He did not intend to engage in conflict with the alien. Despite their inability to defeat him, they did not incur any losses in this exchange. They were all affluent individuals, after all. The value of the land outside Gotham was not perceived as significant by them. They achieved a product of even greater value. In the realm of business, there are no permanent adversaries. Only enduring interests. After an additional 2 minutes, the meeting concluded. Sam maintained a neutral expression as he turned to exit. At that moment, the still Red Queen articulated a statement. I apologize for the interruption, General Lane, but I must report an ongoing action that requires your attention. Red Queen? What is it? Sam inquired with a raised eyebrow. An individual is attempting to breach my systems. She responded with a casual demeanor. Sam's expression shifted to one of displeasure. Rest assured, General Lane, this endeavor is far from presenting any real danger. A minimal effort at best. She persisted in her dialogue to alleviate the concerns of the general. Who is it? The same was not genuinely concerned. Despite his reservations about Naruto, he maintained a level of understanding with him. If the Red Queen could be compromised by any random individual, then she would not merit her assessment. Disregard the notion that access to this military base is limited. Only individuals of the caliber of the Justice League and Lex Luthor would be considered for entry, yet they would still fall under that classification. A display materialized before him, revealing the military room he had exited moments earlier. The display focused closely on a specific military personnel at his computer station. A compact drive was connected to the USB port, remaining largely inconspicuous. Sam's expression deepened in intensity. The source of the leak originated from within his team. What are their intentions? I have conducted an analysis of the drive. It is designed to discreetly download all accessible data from any connected server, leaving minimal traces behind. However, the download range has been minimized to facilitate the search for all information stored within the last hour. The Red Queen responded. Lane promptly comprehended. As a member of the military, his senses were more acute than those of an average individual, allowing him to quickly deduce the intentions of the culprit. The secret identities of the Justice League's protégés. The investigation had been focused solely on this matter for the past few hours. Since acquiring the Red Queen, he had only utilized her for the CAF incident involving the Justice League proteges. An individual was attempting to acquire the League's confidential identities via him. Within seconds, a multitude of thoughts traversed his mind. Please retrieve the file on this individual. Lane asserted with gravity. He would not accept traitors within his ranks. Relevant information promptly became available to him. Eliminate any items that do not serve a purpose. He placed another order.
The Red Queen complied with the instructions given to her.
30 seconds later. Luthor. Sam's gaze sharpened. The somber atmosphere enveloping him deepened as he reviewed the report. This specific personnel was reportedly introduced into his base under the influence of Cadmus. He was not alone in this regard. While there was a possibility that this might not be the work of Lex Luthor, it is important to note that Cadmus had numerous individuals engaged in the project. Some council members may also be included. Undoubtedly, Lex was the initial individual that came to mind. Could you investigate whether Luthor is the mastermind behind this? Lane inquired with a serious tone. My access is confined to this base and is further restricted within its parameters. My capabilities are consequently limited. The words entered Sam's ears with a sense of calm, prompting a frown from him. The Red Queen did not possess full access to the base's systems. Due to concerns regarding potential outcomes, access for the Red Queens was limited to this military base and one specific satellite. All essential information was thoroughly removed prior to her integration. If not, based on her capabilities, the Red Queen could ascertain the identities of all Justice League members almost instantaneously upon gaining total control of all satellites in the United States. Lane turned around and exited, his mind occupied with numerous thoughts. Sam held a genuine wariness towards Lex Luthor, one of the few individuals who elicited such a response. With his focus now directed towards him, Lane needed to strategize his subsequent steps meticulously. Lex had extensive connections. He was not an individual with whom one could engage casually. However, let us prioritize the initial steps. An unfortunate mole is poised to endure an unprecedented ordeal. In the expanse beyond Earth's atmosphere, a portal was created in the emptiness of space. A solitary spaceship emerged from the portal located thousands of miles away and swiftly progressed forward. United States. Central City. It appears the mole has been apprehended. Lex inquired with consideration as he examined the encrypted message he had just received. He was not directing his inquiry at anyone specifically, as it functioned more as a statement than as an actual question. The communication explicitly detailed that the individual embedded within Area 37 military base was apprehended recently. It appears that he was apprehended by General Lane personally and subsequently taken to the interrogation room for thorough questioning. The sender of the message was evidently another mole. What is your opinion on this, Mercy? Lex directed a question towards the composed woman positioned at the steering wheel of the limousine. His voice conveyed no emotional response to the situation as he inquired of the female figure without turning his head at all. Mercy operated the classic black limousine, which was under stringent security, with a sense of ease. Her short dark hair was neatly parted to the side, and her expression conveyed a subtle sense of indifference. Assistant, chauffeur, and security personnel for the renowned CEO of LexCorp, Mercy Graves. I am uncertain. She responded with a lack of enthusiasm, her expression marked by a hint of coldness. Mercy, have you ever participated in guessing games? Lex inquired with a hint of amusement. I possess. What is the next step? I have a preference against them. She responded with a slight undertone of dissatisfaction. Working for an individual like Lex Luthor presented significant challenges. The challenges presented by her supervisor over the years led her to become a valued patron at the pharmacy. Lex was unbothered by her tone during the conversation. Ultimately, despite their roles as employer and employee, they had developed a relatively close relationship over the years of collaboration. Mercy Graves was the sole employee permitted to address him by name without repercussions. Additionally, I presume you have already formed your opinions on the subject, correct? Mercy inquired with a hint of sarcasm. Oh Mercy, you have a deep understanding of my character. Lex responded in a tone that conveyed sarcasm. It seems you anticipated his failure, did you not? Mercy inquired with keen interest. She had been with Luthor for an extended period, gaining insight into his typical thought processes and approach to reasoning. I did that. Based on the information he provided, I anticipated a failure probability of no less than 86. Lex stated in a relaxed manner. His tone was casual, as though he had not just sentenced a man to a dire outcome. To him, the mole was merely a chess piece for evaluating his assumptions. He found it unnecessary to contemplate the consequences he faced after being apprehended. What was the objective? Mercy inquired. Data, my esteemed assistant, data. The essential element to all matters. Lex responded with a smile. The recent developments over the past week are quite noteworthy, to say the least. While not the primary character, General Lane stands out as a significant figure in this context. Deserving of attention. It seems that he requires increased attention. Lex's eyes radiated curiosity. Mercy's eyebrows furrowed. It has appeared once more. Her supervisor was formulating a strategy. However, you did not acquire anything of significant value. Oh. That is your perspective, Mercy. Lex smiled lightly as he lifted a small canned beverage to his lips. He elevated the tablet in his hand and made several taps on the screen. The tablet displayed an image of a grand city located on the outskirts of Gotham City. What is that? Mercy, observing the tablet via the rearview mirror, expressed surprise. When did her supervisor develop an interest in watching sci-fi movies? That, my dear, is a city small in size, yet a city all the same. Luthor remarked with his characteristic smile. On the periphery of Gotham. Mercy was left in a state of disbelief by his words. You, however, that cannot. Her lips quivered as she articulated fragmented sentences, grappling with the reality of what she was witnessing. Her eyes were fully open in astonishment. Are you serious? She inquired with astonishment. Do I appear to be joking? Lex displayed a subtle frown without shifting his gaze. Mercy quickly regained her composure. Indeed, Lex was not the type of individual to engage in such humor. The reality that he was not joking rendered it more difficult to accept. How is that possible? I have not received any updates regarding the construction of a city outside Gotham. Could you please clarify when this event occurred? My assistant, we inhabit a realm where deities and aquatic beings coexist. Extraterrestrial beings with the ability to elevate structures and individuals who can exceed the speed of sound are observed on a weekly basis. I can confidently state that at this juncture, nothing takes me by surprise. Lex stated in a relaxed manner. The cold light in his eyes faded away, and a relaxed, casual look took its place as he started to walk forward. We can wrap up the plan for dealing with General Lane later. So, he really had to strike a pose for the camera if he wanted to take home the win. Sam's perspective. Hey, what's going on? Lane frowned as he asked the Red Queen. Based on what she said, Sam suddenly felt a knot of uneasiness in his stomach. Looks like the Earth might be facing an invasion soon. The gentle, laid-back voice of the Red Loli filled his ears, but to him, it felt like a thunderclap. Before he could even ask her what she meant, she pulled up a satellite reading right in front of Sam's eyes. Just a moment later. Oh no. Lex's perspective. Lex stood behind the podium, wearing a warm and inviting smile. The mayor of Central City was just a short distance to his left, and the cameras kept flashing non-stop. The sounds, the chants, the cheers. What a vibe. This moment was being shown to everyone around the globe. As Lex glanced at the huge crowd that had gathered, he couldn't help but feel a sense of indifference bubbling up inside him. Even though Lex loved being in the spotlight, he didn't really feel like he had achieved much inside. Well, he wasn't the president just yet. But on the outside, he still had that unsettling smile. Let's be real, a poker face just doesn't cut it for a presidential campaign. With a crowd of eager faces before him, Lex cleared his throat and started to speak. Hey everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today as a proud member of this amazing community. Lex started to share the speech he had practiced earlier for this event, standing in front of a bunch of cameras. But you know, while the American nation has been doing really well in areas like the economy, technology, and business, I can't help but feel that our national security hasn't kept up under our current president. Lex said with a heavy tone, his words casting a shadow over the mood. The reporters from different newspapers started taking notes or recording with a serious vibe. Right from the get-go, they could already sense a big scoop on the horizon. In the midst of all the reporters, there was Iris West, blending right in with the throng of eager journalists. So, 5 years back, Professor August Ackerman mentioned that our world entered this golden age of the supernatural. People with incredible abilities just showed up, bringing in a whole new era for our blue planet. Some served as a symbol of justice, promoting peace and harmony, like the Justice League. Some people, not really. Lex mentioned it in a laid-back way. Men, women, kids, aliens, and those cool underwater creatures from the myths we heard when we were little. There are so many people out there with powers and technology that are way beyond what we regular humans could have even dreamed of just 5 years ago. So, here we are, 5 years later, and we can really see how this golden age has impacted our lives. Lex's expression went icy. With this golden age of superheroes, we also saw the rise of a new era filled with crime, villains, and disasters. The death toll has gone up a lot more in the past 5 years than it has in decades. Everyone in the crowd was quiet. The huge crowd of people, clicking cameras, and the big procession all seemed to be wrapped up in a feeling of sadness. It wasn't just those at the scene, even folks watching from their TV screens around the globe felt a wave of sadness. All that could be heard was the calm, clear, and surprisingly loud voice of Lex Luthor. And you know, there's that well-known saying that whenever the sky falls, there will always be folks ready to hold it up. And so it happened that the golden age of the supernatural transformed into a time filled with heroes and villains, always clashing with each other over who would come out on top. So, where do we, the everyday folks, come into play in all of this? What category are we in when these two forces clash? What happens to the everyday folks who weren't given those amazing abilities to stand up for themselves when times get tough? Lex Luthor hit a button on the podium. A holographic chart popped up in the background behind him. Let me share what category it is. The screen switched to 1998, revealing the chaos that unfolded worldwide with the Wonder Woman and the Wishing Stone incident. The victims. The screen switched again to show the Metropolis showdown from just last week. The numbers on the graphic chart updated to reflect the heartbreaking death toll. And the slaughtered. He pressed another button with a serious tone. The screen switched again to reveal the scene that brought about the formation of the Justice League. Steppenwolf's invasion. The parademons are attacking. The death toll on the chart really skyrocketed this time. The atmosphere felt really heavy. Everyone watching this event felt a bit weighed down by their moods. The screen just kept flipping through one disaster after another. Zod's invasion, the nuclear reactor incident in Gotham, and Parallax in Coast City. These events weren't just affecting American citizens, it felt like everyone around the globe was tuning in and having their minds opened up. The world they lived in was a really risky place. So, in those accidents, even though they were stopped in the end, how many people actually lost their lives in those disasters? Wow, thousands. Wow, hundreds of thousands. Wow, millions. Luthor noticed how his speech impacted the crowd and felt a sense of satisfaction inside. Don't pay too much attention to his offhand comments, it was all about creating some momentum. Hey everyone, have you noticed that in all these situations, the country that keeps coming up the most is ours? Lex said with a serious tone. The air felt really heavy and intense. Out of nowhere, the death toll chart was swapped out for a crime chart. Hey, race what the crime statistics were like before the golden era. And this is what it looks like now. It was actually worse than that. Hey there, folks. You know what? We're not the only ones hanging out in this vast universe. There are some really powerful and advanced civilizations out there in galaxies far, far away, and they could easily wipe us out if they wanted to. How many more lives need to be lost in these kinds of disasters? How many more invasions are we going to have to deal with? Today it could be your neighbor, but who knows, maybe tomorrow it'll be you. Alright, that's it. He banged his palm on the podium, looking really fired up, showing a mix of anger, patriotism, and a sense of being right. I've got this dream, this vision, if you don't mind me sharing. In a place where people can feel safe, where they don't have to worry about hiding or the threat of getting caught in a sudden clash between heroes and villains. It's a place where folks can just relax and feel safe, without any worries in this new era. Imagine a world where parents don't have to find out about their children's death while they're on their way home from school. My company, LexCorp, and I have some big plans. We're looking to tackle the crime rates in Gotham, get rid of those superpowered villains in Metropolis for good, and make sure we can prevent any terrible events from happening in the first place. The folks in the United States have been through a lot already. Lex's passionate voice rang out as he swung his arm in the air with enthusiasm. The gloomy vibe disappeared in an instant, replaced by a wave of excited energy. Americans, taking in the scene, couldn't help but get excited. Lots of people were in tears.
Have you ever thought about how many people have lost someone they care about due to crime attacks, superhero battles, or even alien invasions? How many more people had their lives turned upside down on those occasions? Their lives turned upside down, their bodies left in pain. So many. It hasn't been that long since the Battle of Atlantis. When's it going to end? Most of the American population had their inner fears brought to light by Lex. Who really isn't afraid of death? Let's all come together to create a better and safer future for ourselves and our loved ones. Text him making a promise to all of you, so let's make it happen. Vote for me, Lex Luthor, for President of the United States. Lex wrapped things up with both arms stretched out. He was met with a wave of enthusiastic cheers, applause, and the bright flashes of cameras. Lex couldn't help but smirk. All right, step 1 is done. Everything was going just right. What we really need now is just some time and a bit of straightforward planning, and it all kicks off with Lex Luthor stepping into the role of president. Before long, folks around the globe would start to feel hate and resentment toward the very heroes they once adored. Lex waved at the crowd, lost in his thoughts. Out of nowhere, a loud boom echoed through the air. The noise was so intense that many drivers got confused, resulting in a bunch of road accidents. So many mirrors, window panes, and glass cups just shattered everywhere in the heart of the city. The glass panel behind Luthor broke into a million pieces. Mercy quickly jumped in front of Lex and pushed him down to the ground. The crowd down below started to freak out when everything happened so suddenly. What was happening? The question on everyone's mind was quickly answered when a dark shadow fell from the sky, casting a shadow over nearly half of Central City. Everyone looked up at the sky. Luthor softly nudged Mercy aside as he also looked up. Lex's expression shifted completely when he caught sight of the last thing he ever thought he would see. A huge, round spaceship was hovering high above the skies of Central City. The heavy vibe came back out of nowhere, and suddenly, everyone in Central City was in a total panic. Oh my gosh! What's that? Whoa, check it out! It's a spaceship! Dang it! Oh no, another invasion! Everyone just stood there, completely shocked. Lex stared at the spaceship zooming by and suddenly shouted 6 words. Are you serious right now? With the rise of this golden age of superheroes, we also saw the emergence of a new era filled with crime, villains, and disasters. The death tolls have gone up significantly several times in the last 5 years compared to what we've seen in decades. So, where do we, the everyday folks, fit into all of this? What category are we in when these two forces clash? What happens to the everyday people who don't have those extraordinary abilities to stand up for themselves when times get tough? The slaughtered squash. Clark's hand was gripping the cup of coffee so tightly that it got all squished up. I always thought Lex running for president was a bad idea. Clark leaned in and whispered, his gaze fixed on the screen on the wall, his eyes seeming like they could dig right through it. Yeah, they totally could. As he watched Luthor's speech, he felt a swirl of sadness and anger stirring inside him. Hey Smallville, looks like you're at it again with the coffee. Hey, Lois! Clark was jolted awake from his daze by the soft, elegant voice next to him. He turned his head and spotted Lois Lane coming his way, and a smile crept onto his face without him even realizing it. His relationship with Lois Lane is pretty amazing. It did bug him a little when she called him Smallville, but it was really just a tiny annoyance. Hey there! Lois smiled as she walked up to him. She turned her head to the screen and caught a glimpse of Lex's campaign video. Are you really going to clean that up? Oh. This? Clark glanced at the spilled coffee and couldn't help but smile wryly. He'll just get the janitor to take care of it. Lois just shrugged and glanced at the screen. So, you're not a fan of Lex Luthor, huh? She asked, feeling a sense of wonder. Dislike is putting it mildly. Clark habitually pushed his glasses up on his face. Since he and Luthor were archenemies, saying they disliked each other was really an understatement. Lois was kind of expecting it. There were definitely quite a few people at the Daily Planet who knew about Clark's dislike for Lex Luthor. he typically turned down any stories that had to do with Lex and his company. Lois once asked him why, and she was a bit surprised to learn that the Kents and the Luthors had a little connection back in Kansas. Oh, it was all about family. It was something that took place even before Lex's dad passed away. What do you think is wrong now? Lois asked with a hint of curiosity. Looks like Hes got his sights set on the Justice League again. He was really open in his response. Oh? I can't really remember him directly blaming the League for anything. You probably know better than I do, Lois. Clark just shook his head. His words might not have been direct, but they're definitely changing how people think. Getting people to believe that the casualties from the League's battles with villains are the League's responsibility. Aren't they? Lois raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Absolutely not. They're not. I mean, not everything. Clark said, a bit unsure, with his feelings all over the place. A soft laugh came from next to him. It seems like you're not totally convinced either. Clark stayed quiet for a bit. That's why he had such mixed feelings. Luthor was kind of working to sway people away from them, you know? But you know, he kind of thought Lex had a point. When heroes and villains clash in crowded places, it can definitely result in some serious consequences. But you know, those kinds of casualties didn't really happen all that often. The enemies that each hero faced one-on-one were usually taken care of before they could create any major chaos. Unless, of course, they came across someone who could match their level of destruction. Just like what happened in Metropolis. Clark looked over at the wall, his eyes scanning it curiously. Just outside the Daily Planet, he spotted the ruined area in the distance, still being worked on. He felt a sharp pain in his heart when he thought about how many people lost their lives in that fight. Lex's words kept echoing in my mind. How many people end up dying every time a hero and a villain clash? I think the Justice League is really trying their hardest. It wouldn't be right for the public to turn against them for that. After a bit, Clark mentioned. Lois let out a sigh, but then a smile spread across her face. Keep your head up, Smallville. I get that you're a fan of the Justice League, but those big heroes can handle things on their own. Hey, you should really focus less on them and more on when you're planning to drop that intergang report on Perry's desk. Hes going a bit crazy. Clark's eyes got really big. Hey, you didn't forget, right? No way. I think I might have it on my desk. Clark spoke softly. Lois held back a chuckle. Clark gave a warm smile too. At that moment, something went wrong. The TV suddenly made a loud noise, and then the screen went dark while colorful lights started popping up. Wow! Hey, what's up? Lois said with excitement. Clark's eyes suddenly turned serious, and his ears twitched a bit. Lois stared at the blank screen, and her mind started churning away. Hey, it seems like the live feed has stopped working for some reason. So, what about Lex's campaign? Weird, hey, Clark, hey, Clark? Lois turned around without really thinking about it, and to her surprise, Clark was nowhere to be found. Is it a disappearing act? Lois couldn't believe it. She glanced around, hoping to spot Clark, but didn't have any luck. She quickly headed over to Perry's office. Lois! Hey, Lois! Hey, Jimmy? Hey, what's going on? Lois couldn't help but ask as she looked at Jimmy, who had just appeared opposite them. I'm not really sure either part of the screen just went blank on me. The crew is checking the sets at the moment. Hey Jimmy, were all those screens showing the Luthor campaign in Central City? So. I'm not really sure about that. Yeah, I suppose so. Why's that? Lois fell silent and quickly pulled out her tablet. Just 20 seconds later. I think I get it now. Hey, have you heard about Central City? The huge spaceship floated in the sky over a crowd of hundreds of thousands of people. The people down below were already starting to panic. So, there we were, inside the spaceship. A figure was standing in front of the monitor room, hands clasped behind his back.
He was staring right at the holographic projection of Central City below. His skin had a bit of a mix, with some areas darker than others. The texture was rough, almost like stone, and he seemed like a living statue. He had 3 sharp spikes jutting out from his back, right around the spinal area, and his face was hidden behind a menacing helmet that resembled a gladiator's mask. His burly stature, standing over 3 meters tall, gives off a vibe of oppression and bloodlust. "Hey there, we've located the Zarnian." A humanoid figure with horns on his head spoke respectfully while standing at a control panel nearby. The room was far from empty, filled with some odd-looking figures busy at their control consoles. "Hey, have you looked into how developed this world is?" The alien's voice came out hoarse as it asked. Even though this civilization had totally changed his view of what primitive meant, he still asked without any rush. The planet didn't have any deep space sensors. No cosmic fleet, no planetary shields, and no backup defense systems. They practically just strolled right through an open door. "Sure, I have. It seems like we've really underestimated how behind this sector is. These Earthlings still haven't figured out how to travel through space, my lord. A single patrol fleet from our world could easily take them out of existence." The alien with horns said. It was clear from his tone that he just couldn't wrap his head around how they had completely misjudged this planet, especially considering how low they had rated it. If that's the case, why does the poor guy have such low life signs? The figure asked with a casual tone. "You know, my lord, even though the folks on this planet might seem pretty weak, their guardians are a different story," the horned man said, and then the screen split to show some info that was relevant. The big alien took a good look at it for a bit. "The Justice League?" "Absolutely, my lord. So, we've got a Kryptonian, who's like a demigod from the old gods, a green Martian, a couple of Thanagarians, and 2 lanterns from the Green Lantern Corps. Quite the lineup, right? The others in this planet's database are pretty interesting too. So, it seems like Earth's mightiest heroes. It's made up of some really strong individuals who could even be a challenge for you, my lord." The horned man spoke nervously. Squelch. Sadly, those were the final words he could utter in this life before his head was cleanly severed from his body. The horned alien's body hit the ground, and its head tumbled away, rolling across the floor. A sharp metal plate, stained with blood, was hovering in the air, guided by someone who gradually emerged from the shadows. The figure didn't stand on the ground. Instead, it floated in the air, with long limbs, fingers, and a narrow abdomen. One side of the skin was black, and the other side was white. The teeth were showing, and the eyes were a striking red. A Martian that's white. Well, it used to be that way. Whatever it is, we just don't know right now. It doesn't really matter what kind of defenders this planet has. We've gotten ready for the Kryptonian. Hey, can you go down and grab that Zarnian Mericross? The burly figure spoke without even glancing back at the Martian. The Martian paused for a moment, then gradually lowered itself, slipping right through the ship's floor. Hey, don't give me orders, Arkin. I'm here for the chamber, not for you. Get ready to catch the Kryptonian, because I won't be the one to explain if things go south. But he could hear the Martian's voice in his head, speaking through telepathy. The alien, Arkin, stayed quiet, but the darkness around him seemed to have grown even stronger. He was completely silent except for his heavy breathing. He spun around and strolled over to a specific wall. As he got closer, the wall slid open to show a set of super advanced combat armor. So, you want me to go after the Kryptonian? I'll definitely catch him, no doubt about it. The alien, Arkin said, his voice barely above a whisper. He let out a wave of fierce energy as he grabbed a set of chains covered in sharp spikes. It felt like it was coming alive as the chains lifted from where they were resting and wrapped around Arkin's arms. The sharp spikes dug into his arms as the chains wrapped around them, pulling out streams of blood. The chains then glowed with a spooky red light, giving off a strange vibe. Al-Rakaman. Today, you get to try the blood of Krypton. The Martian floated right through the ship and popped up outside. It floated downwards with both hands behind its back, making its way to Star Labs, where Lobo's life signature was coming from. It came in from the sky above Star Labs, floating down gently in less than a minute. Can you believe that such a basic planet could actually hurt this immortal monster so badly, almost to the point of death? That's incredible, Maricross said with a playful tone. She had already picked up on Lobo the moment they got close to Earth's atmosphere with her strong telepathy. Now that she was much closer, she could really get a good sense of Lobo's situation. Who do you think could pull this off? Was it the Kryptonian, huh? Or is it the one from the old god's lineage? She was definitely sure it wasn't the Lanterns. She had casually read the minds of many Earthlings and had a bit of insight into the strength of Earth's defenders. From what she discovered, it turns out the last son of Krypton wasn't to blame for this. Lobo nearly took out the Kryptonian. She thought it was pretty interesting that, oh, look, one of the Guardians is coming over now. She was snapped out of her thoughts when a red lightning blur zipped onto the roof of Star Labs. The sun was shining pretty bright on this day. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, the folks in Central City just couldn't feel it. The huge shadow looming above them filled them with an overwhelming sense of fear. A spaceship, way bigger than the tallest building in the city, was hovering above them, and no one really knew what it was up to. Hey there, folks. This is Central City Bugle coming to you live from downtown, and guess what? We're witnessing yet another extraterrestrial invasion happening right here on Earth. The people in the city are really anxious as they wait for a response from the military and the justice. The city was wrapped in a heavy gloom, and chaos was spreading everywhere like wildfire. It felt like the end of the world as human nature took over the city, with people triggering a series of disasters. Criminals, thugs, or even your friendly next-door neighbor, you can list them all. What a self-absorbed bunch. You'd think that after everything they've been through, they'd be used to it by now. The Martian said out loud while trying to make sense of everything going on around her. Thanks to some wild accidental mutations, her Martian abilities gave her telepathy that was strong enough to tap into the minds of everyone on this planet. She processed the thoughts, feelings, and dark desires of countless people, which deepened her understanding of what it means to be human. Well, it didn't really matter, did it? She didn't really feel anything for them, just a sense of indifference. It wasn't because she looked down on lower lifeforms like some other races in the universe, or because she thought she was naturally better. It was simply that she didn't have any emotions. Besides a bit of curiosity, what really drove her was this instinct to get her mission done. Other than the two future experimental subjects, this planet really didn't have anything that would catch the Chamber's attention. They really didn't care about this little planet at all. Don't you think so, Mr. Allen? Should I just call you Flash, like most of your kind do? Maricross called out to Barry, who was up on the roof of Star Labs, rocking his classic red suit with those cool yellow lightning bolts on it. So, you'll have to cut us some slack, Mr. Earth. We haven't really had the best experiences with visitors. Flash said with a serious expression as he gazed at the floating alien. Mr. Maricross replied in a really odd way. Her body started to change quickly before it reshaped itself once more. The big white alien with those awful expressions was gone. What Barry saw in front of him was a stunning beauty with white hair and fair skin, striking red eyes, and lovely curves. All dressed up in a sleek black and white, skin-tight suit. Barry's eyes widened in surprise at the sudden change. Wait, you're a she. Flash exclaimed in disbelief. Then he squinted his eyes. Hey, you're a Martian too. White Martian. Hey, I think your buddy John Johns has filled you in on what the Martian race is all about. You totally read my mind. Barry's tone felt a little distant. He felt a tightness in his heart, too. So. Barry didn't say a word. He was staring intently at the stunning female Martian above him. Hey, I really don't want to hurt you, and honestly, I'm not sure what you're looking for. But I promise you, taking us on. Hurt who? Just as the Flash was about to finish what he was saying, a strong force hit him hard. Barry Allen, the fastest man alive, got launched into the distance. Maricross just stood there, not showing any emotion, as he saw someone crash into the wall of a building far off, leaving a crack behind before hitting the pavement. She held her posture just the same, not shifting a single bone. She turned her gaze away from him and looked back at Star Labs. In the same way, Her telekinetic power zeroed in on Lobo's container perfectly. "Hey, come on." The 4-foot-tall, 4-foot-long tank filled with liquid was lifted from its spot, zooming forward as if it were a servant responding to its master's command. The tank smashed through a bunch of walls and stuff, making the building shake a bit before it finally broke through the roof. It slowed down and hovered in the air before her, looking perfectly fine. The Justice League had beefed up the container with a special energy shield that could totally handle the hits it took before. As Maricross glanced at Lobo in the container, they shrugged it off and got ready to head back to the ship. She had completed her part of the mission, and now, out of nowhere, 2 beams of super-hot lasers came zooming toward her from far away. Her expression stayed the same while her body turned intangible, letting both energy beams pass right through her. Wow, that was loud. So, a corner of Star Labs went up in flames from those laser beams, but honestly, that's not the main point here. The floating tank just shifted to the side out of nowhere. A blur zipped by where it started and came to a halt a few meters away. "Hey, I think it might be a good idea to put down the tank, miss." Clark frowned as he spoke. The woman in front of him completely brushed off his heat vision, which made him think of someone specific. Maricross raised an eyebrow as her telekinetic power kicked in. Superman felt that same invisible push that Barry experienced. Just a few times stronger. Oh no. Clark let out a groan as he felt it slam into him, sending him stumbling backwards. But Clark definitely had some Kryptonian qualities in him. He quickly got himself steady and pushed back against the attack. His eyes sparkled in a fiery red as he unleashed his heat vision. Here we go again, it was pointless. Powerful. Deserving of being a Kryptonian. She pushed her palm forward, her voice sounding indifferent. Clark's eyes got really big. He had just managed to find his balance when it felt like something was holding him back, almost as if invisible shackles were wrapped around him. It's the same force, but even stronger than before. Clark got kicked out. Superman's body went crashing through one building, then another, before he finally hit the concrete floor. As the dust cleared, there stood Clark, looking pretty embarrassed. The fall didn't hurt or hold him back, proving just how tough the steel body of the Men of Tomorrow really is. As Clark pushed himself off the floor, the first thing that hit him was the sound of screams. Civilians were rushing away in large numbers, darting around like mice, trying to escape the chaos, and it's happening not just close by, but further out too. He felt a quick pang of guilt in his heart, but it passed just as fast. It's really interesting how much you care about these people. Have you heard about that? Maricross drifted down with the tank right next to her. You know, you're not the first one, or even the first alien to say that to me. Clark responded in a serious manner. He furrowed his eyebrows as he noticed the white skin on the ladder. White skin, shifting density, telekinesis. You're from Mars. Are you, though? They didn't reply. Clark saw that as a yes. He glanced over at the tank where Lobo was swimming around. I'm not sure what you're planning to do with Lobo, but there's no way you're taking him with you. Not at all. Not only am I leaving with him, but you're coming with me too. Clark's face twisted into an unpleasant expression. I'd love to see you give it a shot. His eyes were shining brightly. What he mentioned. Suddenly, 2 bright green lights shot down from the sky. The green glow surrounding them slowly disappeared, showing 2 lanterns instead. Hal and Stewart stepped in, their rings charged with determination and their postures poised for a showdown. It's about time, Clark said. He kept his eyes glued to the Martian. Who's this? Stewart asked. I have no idea, but just be careful. She's from Mars. Wonder Woman and the rest of the League are on their way. Let's handle this girl first, then we can. Hal was in the middle of saying something when, out of nowhere, a beam of light came crashing down from the spaceship above, hitting the floor right next to the Martian. The light faded away, revealing a giant creature over 3 meters tall, all decked out in a special suit of armor. He had 2 twin tails and gripped spiked chains, and his huge frame radiated a feeling of intimidation. Seems like you're not the only one bringing in some backup. Stewart frowned and said to Clark. He cautiously looked over the 2 figures standing next to each other. Kryptonian. Arkin looked closely at Superman, the spark in his eyes nearly aflame. You're mine. All right, that's enough. Hal and Stewart both lifted their rings, ready to strike. Ah. Oh no. But then, out of nowhere, they both grabbed their heads and let out a scream. The two lanterns hit the ground at the same time, crying out in pain. Lantern. Hey, what's going on? Superman's expression shifted with the unexpected turn of events. What have you been up to? Clark spun around and shouted at the troublemakers. He yelled at Marikraz, whose eyes had gone completely white at some point. Controlling the mind. Clark took off, zooming ahead at lightning speed. The concrete beneath his feet had turned into rubble. Sadly. Arkin, keeping a close eye on him, quickly dashed forward to cut him off. The two figures bumped into each other, and cracks like a web started to form on the floor. The white-eyed Martian frowned a bit and floated back into the air to dodge the aftershock. As soon as they collided, it was clear what the result would be. Arkin, the alien, got knocked away because of the huge difference in strength. He soared through the air for quite a while before hitting the asphalt road. Every time his body hit the ground, it left behind deep pits and craters, and eventually, he slammed into a building, creating a wide hole. Superman, in contrast, remained steadfast in his position. It is now your opportunity. Clark directed his attention toward Marikraz and ascended, intending to neutralize her. At that moment, a chain was propelled from the hole in the wall, swiftly extending toward the Kryptonian. Clark furrowed his brow and extended his hand to intercept the chain before it could make contact with him. Silence. The instant his hand made contact, his expression shifted dramatically, contorting in pain. The pointed spikes on the chain body unexpectedly penetrated Superman's skin. The chain, upon encountering fresh blood, emitted an unsettling red hue and encircled Clark's arm. Blood flowed as the spikes penetrated Superman's skin. Before he could make an effort to escape, an additional chain reached out and wrapped around his body, embedding itself within him. "Ack!" Clark exclaimed in pain. A significant pulling force was exerted on the chain, drawing him downward. His figure impacted the ground, resulting in a significant crater. Stay tuned for more. Thank you for watching this amazing video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel for more content. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.